Good afternoon, everybody. So just before I jump into the presentation, just if you give me a show of hands of how many of you know about iBeacon, or is this a learning experience for you at this point? So you know? Okay. All right, so a few of you. Louder, I'm not in charge of the volume here. So could you talk to that lady? Okay, anyway, as the introduction said, my name's Jonathan Duffy. I'm going to talk a little bit today about beacons, and for those of you that don't know or aren't familiar with the technology, I'll give you a baseline introduction to the technology. Then I'll talk a little bit about how it works and how the whole system all connects and how you can start serving your marketing content and messages. I'll then go through some use cases on lots of different industries and applications that we're involved in, some directly and some are from other companies that I'll share with you. And then I wanted to talk about some of the key learnings that we've had over the last few months in deploying beacons, and I think some of those are quite important. And most importantly, then I'll talk a little bit about how the industry is evolving into smarter technology and how those beacons look. So, well, first of all, what's a beacon? A beacon comes in many shapes and sizes. The majority of them that are on the market look like this, and they're operated by a coin cell battery. It's a simple device that emits a Bluetooth signal. When your phone comes into proximity with this, it's able to see it through various status of your phone, and then that triggers a whole bunch of events that go on your content management engine to deliver content. So, the word iBeacon is often misused. iBeacon is Apple's technology only, or Apple's trade name, should I say, for this technology. So not all beacons are iBeacons. Apple have a very specific specification for their technology, and some beacons meet that spec and some don't. The generic term in the industry is becoming beacon, although everybody talks about iBeacon because it's easily recognized. So how does it work? So the beacon is something, as I just pointed out, that you would have lots of in a deployment, and they're just stuck on walls in shopping centres or in museums, etc. Your phone, the beacon itself is broadcasting a signal, and that signal consists of 4 pieces of information. First of all, it's a unique ID, so each beacon has its own unique ID. And that actually locates that beacon to a specific token. The second thing that happens is that it's broadcasting 2 other pieces of information, which is its major ID and minor ID. You might want to think about those as a major ID being a building and a minor ID being a room in a building. So that's kind of one analogy for it. The 4th piece of information that's embedded in that is actually the signal strength. And that actually helps the engagement understand how close you are to the beacon before you start an engagement. So it's the frequency or signal strength that the beacon is transmitting, which is variable. Once the smartphone comes into contact with a beacon, the assumption here is your phone has an app, a native app on board. The native app has an SDK, a piece of software in it, that actually enables it to see a beacon. Once the app sees the beacon, it then connects through its own radio devices, whether that's Wi-Fi or cellular, off to a cloud marketing system typically that pulls down then content or notifications. So the app can be many different levels of content, from a simple notification saying welcome to a room, or it could be a coupon, or it could be richer content. That really is driven by your content management engine versus the beacon technology. So how long do they last? The beacons that are ubiquitous on the market tend to look like this, and these are powered by coin cell battery. As a standard beacon, not operating at Apple's frequencies, this will last about 2 years. Apple have changed their rules on the beacon and wanted it to transmit a lot more than what the industry had assumed last year. So it moved the transmission rate from 4 times a second to 10 times a second, roughly. And that meant the battery life on these actually started to become problematic, and it moved from 2 years down to about 3 months. So there are some other technologies on the market now that address that problem differently, and this is one of them. This is powered by AA cell battery, and this would typically last for 5 years at an iBeacon specification. There are variants on this now that have photovoltaic cells, so they can live under fluorescent light, and there's no power requirement needed on those because obviously it's powered directly from PV. And then there are mains-powered beacons as well. So there's lots of different options starting to appear from different manufacturers. So it's important to note this technology, whilst there are the beacon companies themselves tend to be small companies, startups in various levels of development over the last year. It's important to know that the technology behind it is supported and embedded in Apple phones and Android phones, and in some cases Windows and BlackBerry phones with some smarter beacons. But also Samsung this week just announced their own kind of ecosystem, and they're wanting to build their own native apps on their own app store that will be beacon related. So the key thing here is this technology is being invested by major big brands that think there's a big future with this. So we talk about the technology and the range. A beacon, the industry is using some terminology that's typically immediate, near and far. And immediate means that the engagement starts at 50 centimeters, near means it starts at 1 meter, and far is 30 meters. So the beacons are pre-programmed with that frequency range, and dependent upon whether you want the small, medium or large frequency is based upon your use case. Typically the trigger events work on entering and exiting these zones. So you could have a first engagement where you are 30 meters away from a beacon, your phone will pick that up 30 meters away, and it could be a welcome message. As you get further into the interaction zone, at 1 meter perhaps, that could give you a different message, and then when you're right on top of the beacon you get another message as well. So there are options to create different levels of interaction in different proximity. When you come away from the beacon you can reverse that and have different interaction on exit. So when you get to the end, goodbye, thanks for coming. A simple analogy. So there's a lot of questions about what is this Bluetooth low energy. The first thing to say here, it's something that is in all smartphones and has been since 2010. It's not Bluetooth 4.0 Classic, it's a stack that sits in there, and it actually is just a low energy piece of the Bluetooth packet. The Bluetooth low energy packet does not have the same effect on draining your phone's battery as connecting to a headset or connecting your phone in the car. It only has a minor impact on a phone's life if it's connected to a beacon. So then the next question comes up about, well, what about privacy? Obviously there's a lot of concerns. I think if you start talking to millennials, they're not really bothered. They'll give you all their data and they don't care, and it's like, what can you give me for that? But there are perhaps people in my generation that are more conscious of that and actually are worried about how this technology is used. So the key message here is our recommendation, and how we're working with our customers, is always ensure that you're going through the correct opt-in processes, that you're not breaching data privacy rules, and also that you're delivering value. We feel that, and I think the industry is highly aware of this, and some of the brand owners we're working with are aware that if you start spamming your customers, you'll spam them once and you'll never have a chance to talk to them again. So the applications that you're developing and use cases really need to be something that's creating value for the customer. So the last thing that on this slide is about security as well. There's questions about, well, if a beacon is an open standard, it could easily be hacked. So if you have in this hall, for instance, if there was a beacon, so another brand could come along and start to broadcast their message off that beacon. So some of the beacon technology now is getting a lot smarter, and it's starting to rotate this UUID so that you can't actually access it easily. So therefore, that if I was recommending to you a deployment, look at secure beacons rather than just standard beacons. So what's it all about then? I guess the key thing here to note is the beacon isn't that intelligent, but it does act as a trigger, and it acts as a trigger for you to set up an event with your customer in a specific location at a specific time. So if you think of all the different objects you walk past in a day, these objects could trigger an event. So we're working with some customers where they're embedding beacons in name tags or in their own kind of packaging, so you wouldn't necessarily see this little thing that's on the wall, but the beacon's there. So it's kind of becoming something that's embedded into technology as a secondary concern. So then we talk about the Internet of Things, and the Internet of Things, you're probably aware, it's a new customer engagement channel, and this is something that's actually starting to develop. And this is where I get challenged with technology now, no doubt. Anyway, I have a little link here that will hopefully go straight to the world population. And this is what's going on today. So happy birthday to everybody who's just arriving, and goodbye to a few friends, no doubt. But anyway, so you can see here, this is what our world population looks like. If I go back to our slide here, if I can find it. What we know today, 7.5 million people, there are 12.5 million connected devices in the world already. And that was in 2008, and that's numbers coming from Cisco. By 2020, it's expected there'll be 50 million connected devices. Many of those connected devices will be beacons. So we already know that the numbers, latest numbers over the last few weeks, there are 500,000 beacons deployed around the world. And it's forecast by 2018 there'll be 50 million. So this technology is rolling out and happening quickly. So who's using it today? These are a few examples of live customers, and I'll talk about these, and then I'll go into some very vertical use cases. So Apple, no doubt you're probably aware that they are using it themselves. They're behind the technology. In every Apple store in the USA, there are beacons now. When you walk in there, it will start sending you messages if you've got the Apple App Store app on your phone. If you go into the Regent Store, Apple Regent Store at the moment, you can, if you've got the Apple Store app, you can walk in there, pick up a piece of merchandise, walk out the store, and it automatically invoices you. So there's no customer engagement required for that, and that's beacon technology that's supporting that engagement. So they're also using it for home orders and collection. So you may order a computer at home. When you walk past the Apple Store, you may get a notification saying your computer's ready, and then you have an option, I'll come in and pick it up, and somebody will have it waiting for you straight there and then, or you actually walk away and say, no, I'll pick it up tomorrow, and they'll know that. So it's that level of interaction with their customers they're looking at. The NFL and NBA in America have deployed it across stadia, all their stadia in the USA, and they're using it really for something that I'm struggling to understand here, because I'm a football supporter, I go to Premiership football, and they're using it to actually upsell seats in the stadium. Well, we don't have that option here, so kind of the use case is really not as relevant. They're also using it, I think if you go to a sports event in America, it's largely around an eating entertainment rather than watching the game, and therefore they're ordering food at your seat, which again here is a little odd for us. So CeBIT is interesting, trade show. They were one of the first large deployments here in Europe, and they installed beacons throughout the fairground during CeBIT last year. And basically they were just testing the technology, and all they wanted to do was just see the technology work. And on the CeBIT app, which they have a high level of adopters of the CeBIT app just because of the technology space they're in, they were able to start messaging people around the fairground about different halls and what technologies were in each hall. So you may be in the wireless networking hall, or you might be in the software data hall. So you get that information as you were entering the hall about where you were going. And then they'd use it for some other job fair interaction as well. It was interesting with CeBIT because the company involved I was working with, they said that they would pay a penny, euro cents, for a notification to the company involved. On the first day, they served 560,000 messages. So there was a little flurry of renegotiation around that. So, but again, that's a technology space, and you'd expect that people will be using it over and over again. But anyway, Virgin Atlantic, they're using it in the club card, in the upper class lounge, and typically they're with their club card gold members, who have an app, they're sending them information about when their flight's departing, and also wayfinding to the gate from the lounge. So it's just a different use case. Tesco we're involved with, and they're using it on a number of things. They're using it for some kind of behind-the-scenes operation where you might want to think about, you hear the message cleaner in aisle 37, that's going to happen seamlessly behind the scenes using beacon technology now, so that's so the customer service improves perhaps on that. They're also looking to work with some of their loyalty card members in perhaps providing value-added content. So if you buy a particular wine, for instance, they know you buy a particular wine. If you come in store, now they know you're in store, and they might give you some information on another wine or of that same wine family. So typically, if you're in the wine aisle, not many people know or have experience to give you information on different products, but they're using it at that level, rather than, and this is important, rather than just sending you a voucher to get 10% off the next bottle. And that's the value chain that they're starting to work with. And then South by Southwest, it's a festival. I'm not sure how many of you know of it, but it goes on in America. It's a technology show, but also a music festival that's combined. And they used it for ticketing and wayfinding and different applications. So those were some of the use cases of high profile over the last year. So the obvious application, and everybody gets this, it's all about retail. It's not all about retail, but I will start here, and then we can go through it. So if you imagine loyal customer of a shop. In this case, it's Helen. She's got the store app on her phone. She's walking down the street. She's approaching the store. As she walks, as she comes into proximity of the store, she will get a notification on her phone saying, "Hello, Helen. We have some special messages, special offers for you, perhaps today." I know the promotion is a little crass, but it's just using an example here of how the technology can work. So she decides she's going to go into the store. And now we know she's coming into the store because we can track her through her phone and phone's MAC address. So she comes into the store, and now she gets a more personalized message, perhaps that's kind of linking her online shopping behavior to things that perhaps might be of interest to her in the store. In this example, she's been looking at shoes, so that's kind of just bear that in mind for a second. But at the same time, the store knows that Helen's walked into the store, so they're able to transmit information to their shop assistants, who can then start to interact with Helen. So the person in the shoe area knows that Helen's in store and she's been looking online at stores. We're connecting the dots here. Looking online at shoes. We're connecting the dots to enhance the customer journey. So then she goes to the shoe department, and she's actually looking at sandals. We've got a deployment going on with a customer at the moment. It just happens to be in a shoe shop, but they've placed little beacons on the shoes, and when the customer's in the shop and they pick the beacon up, they pick the shoe up, the beacon transmits a video, a signal to start a video on the screen. There's a lifestyle video about that merchandise. So that's quite just an aside on that technology. So she then, we're also able to monitor her dwell time here. So it might not be relevant to say to Helen, okay, as soon as she walks into the shoe shop, here's your special offer. But if she's been there for 5 or 10 minutes and she just needs that little nudge, then it might be relevant to say, well, here's the offer. And consequently, managing the dwell time and providing that information back in real time starts to become relevant. So applications, museums. This is I'm going to run a video here, so stand by. This is a use case that an ad agency did with a museum in Antwerp, which is the Rubens Museum in Antwerp. Is that coming out? Okay.